record right now.
Okay.
Tom Vennum, you've just recently published another book on lacrosse
Right.
and American Indians and its importance to the culture and to warrior societies. Tell me a little bit about what got you interested in writing this book and what it means to you from a personal perspective that you've picked up in Indian country.
Well, lots of people, of course, asked me if I played the sport, and when I was growing up, we didn't even have it in Minnesota, at least not in the schools. But I initially got into lacrosse by way of an Indian drumstick. My first book on lacrosse, called Little Brother of War, which is a translation of the Creek word for the game, was stimulated in part by my running across a Menominee lacrosse stick, which was absolutely identical to their drumstick. And I thought, there's got to be some kind of relationship here between the drum and the game and so on. And I just started doing research on the subject because nobody had written much. And the more I kind of scratched, I found increasing numbers of references to in the legends of many tribal people that the lacrosse stick and the game itself were a gift from the Great Spirit, and that the Indians were instructed to carve the lacrosse stick in the shape of a war club. So there was now this connection between game, music, ritual, and warfare, and that's kind of what I explored in the book, the first book I wrote. And then the second one, I had collected some more legends that have been brought to my attention, some wonderful Ho-Chunk stories, for instance, about Redhorn playing lacrosse, and so I felt there was enough there just to expand what was originally an appendix of stories about lacrosse from various tribal people.
Did you find that the game was utilized fairly broadly throughout Indian country, or is it particular to particular tribes?
Well, I'm convinced from my research that the game was widely played in a variety of styles in North America when the Europeans arrived. I was able in the first book to try to distinguish between what was being played in the St. Lawrence River Valley, mostly by Iroquoian tribes, Mohawk, Seneca, Onondaga, Cayuga, and so on. But that style, which is really the progenitor of what is being played now on college campuses and high schools, because it was the Mohawk game that people in Montreal in about 1850 decided to take up and added some rules to it and changed the game a little bit, but that's where it really began, the field game. But that style of play is quite different, say, from what is still played among tribes from the southeast, particularly those that were forced and removed over to what was then Indian Territory, is now Oklahoma.
Right.
And they play a two-stick version of the game with a much shorter stick and one in each hand. But it's still lacrosse, there's no question about it. You're not allowed to touch the ball with your hands. The rules are very similar. And then what was played here in the Great Lakes, Western Great Lakes area, principally by Algonquian-speaking people, Ojibwe, Menominee, Potawatomi, some Siouan groups like Ho-Chunk in eastern Santee Sioux, who I think probably learned the game from the Ojibwe, but that style is played with a different stick, which is still shorter than the northeastern stick. It's about 2.5 feet long, and it comes up in a kind of curves around in itself, and that loop is kind of just large enough for the ball. The ball is usually carved from wood. The Santee Sioux used to bake clay and cover them with rawhide, but the ball was usually carved, and the carver would look for a place where there was a knot in the tree, and that ball was very, very heavy because there was, just compressed sap in it. And there was an invention that's really only here in the Western Great Lakes called the whistling ball, where they drilled a hole through it so that it came screeching when you heard it coming at you. I remember Franklin Dasna over at Redcliffe telling me, well, my God, you hear that damn thing coming, you got to run. So that's the third style of play. So I think I couldn't really document much beyond the Mississippi River. There have been instances of people, anthropologists claiming that some of the northern California peoples had a form of lacrosse, but I don't really think by that time lacrosse was pretty well known, and I think they were looking for something that looked like lacrosse, just like people who look at Mesoamerican, Central American ball court games and think, that's got to be somehow related to lacrosse. I really don't see any connection at all. So.
You said there was this tie between music and lacrosse. Did you find that both in the implements, and what did the role of music play in either supporting or prior to the game?
Well, those tribes that played lacrosse mostly had many ceremonial uses for it, and of course song and dance accompanied all these. Eastern Cherokee, for instance, in North Carolina had very elaborate dances by women the night before the game, and these were all accompanied by drum and singing. And there wasn't really any instance that I could find that there was not music mentioned as being something that began a game or something that happened in the middle of it or during it. So, and the fact that the lacrosse stick is so identical in form to several of the drumsticks that are used, particularly among Wisconsin peoples, or older form of a stick, seemed to me there had to.
The water drum stick?
Well, not the Medewarian Mittagwaki stick is more curved with a little beater on the end, but the business of coming up and curving around inside itself.
Right.
Many of those sticks in the Great Lakes, where the curve comes around on the bottom side, there's usually a little strip of hide or something, which is where they hit the drum with, and so that there seems to be some kind of a mention of a connection there. And then, of course, the whole connection in the legends about the lacrosse stick resembling the war club.
What have you heard about lacrosse on Madeline Island? We're here today on Madeline Island. Have you heard any stories about the Ojibwe up here?
Well, I know that they were playing lacrosse here because in Johann Cole's report, he was here in 1855 for treaty payments. And he says that he was hoping to get a game put up. Now, the game was canceled by the authorities, obviously, the U.S. government, and my suspicion is that with so much cash floating around, and because there were so many people from the mainland, from over in Minnesota that there probably would be a ball game of some sort, and those were always heavily bet on. And I think that the authorities probably suspected that it could really lead to some trouble, which is why they canceled the game. But Cole said he went into some of the villages there, and he saw men making balls out of willow wood. So we know that it was played there, and I've seen old sticks that have survived here in Madeline Island, but I seriously doubt whether the game was alive really much more after the 1854 treaty. It could have been, but.
Mm-hmm. The name of the book that was recently released is called?
Lacrosse Legends of the First Americans.
And it was published by?
Johns Hopkins University Press.
Should be able to get it where?
Or you can get it online, Johns Hopkins University Press, as my other book, American Indian Lacrosse, are both available on that.
And
get them through Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Well, we just got 30 seconds left here. You're distributing your latest book. Tell us just the title of that.
The title is Just Too Much of an Indian, which are words that Bill Baker Beneshi used to describe the way he felt about building drums. And while he was cursing younger Ojibwe and saying that the Anishinaabe were just going to white men's stores to buy bass drums, and he said, "This is my drum, this is the way I make it, I guess I'm too much of an Indian." So,
we look forward to seeing that, Tom.
Okay.
Thank you much.
You bet.